Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Gruely True Sports Network. The NFL Show is brought to you by BetNow.eu. Make sure you go there, use the promo code TRUTH100. I am your co-host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpasser. Right now, I'd like to welcome from the FF Face-Off, Anthony Servino. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing awesome, Mike. How are you?
I figured you were doing awesome since your team beat is it an FCS or an FBS team yesterday?
Oh, they're leaving now?
I mean, it was
All right, thank you.
it was as expected.
Actually, it wasn't. It was only 10-6 at halftime. I thought it was going to screw up my Pick'em show given the 20-some points, but it ended up all right. Let's start off there with the Cowboys and the Dolphins, and I don't think there's much to say. I think these two teams are who we think they are, which is the Cowboys are one of the best teams in the NFL, and the Dolphins are probably the worst. I don't even know if there's a probable there. Dak Prescott, 19 for 32, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Ezekiel Elliott, 19 carries, 125 yards. Tony Pollard, 13 carries, 103 yards. What was your take on this game? I mean, I think it's pretty much what we thought it was, but was there anything you could take away from this with the Cowboys?
I mean, really, if anybody wants to say the Cowboys should have, they should have beaten them a little bit more. Maybe, Dak had his worst game of the season. Well, yeah, of course, Dak had his worst game of the season. When you have 2 running backs going for over 100 yards, you really don't need to throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think the Cowboys look really good. They played the game without Michael Gallup and a couple of defensive starters. And I think, holding the Dolphins to 6 points, I mean, they're the Dolphins, but still. It's the NFL. It's hard to do unless you're the New England Patriots.
Yeah, and right now the good thing is this: 19 to 32, 246, 3 T's, an interception. When you're talking about being let down from a performance like that, I think you're all right in Dallas.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm excited. They have a test coming up this week. The Saints without Drew Brees in New Orleans. I think it's going to be a tough game. Even though Teddy Bridgewater is going to be under center, it's not going to be an easy game going into New Orleans, but this is one that Dallas should realistically be 4-0 after.
Well, and I would think that it helps that the Saints upset the Seahawks in Seattle because maybe that gets the Cowboys' attention a little bit more that, this is a game we really got to pay attention to.
Well, I can't wait to talk about that game, to be honest with you.
You can't ever not wait to talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
No, I'm talking about that Saints win in Seattle.
Yeah, because that was impressive.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was. Anytime you beat Seattle in Seattle, it's impressive. Seattle's not very good, but they have Russell Wilson. So having Russell Wilson is the only thing that saves Pete Carroll's job.
I'm just the anti-Teddy Bridgewater, and I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to get some credit for that win when realistically the Saints defense and special teams put 14 quick points up on the board. That game would have been different if that didn't happen.
Yeah, but isn't that a lot of NFL games? I mean, we saw that happen. Weird stuff happen a lot yesterday, and I don't think that Teddy Bridgewater is very good. I don't think he was very good yesterday. But what I do think with the Saints, Sean Payton's a really good football coach. Their defense is not terrible. Their special teams is good. They've got Alvin Kamara. So if you show up and you're not on your game, they're a team that can beat you, and I think they showed that yesterday to Seattle.
Well, that's the player. I mean, Alvin Kamara, is it me or does Sean Payton call the game differently without Drew Brees? I feel like that offense for the Saints had a little bit more spark to it, especially Alvin Kamara. Maybe they're committing to the run a little bit more, giving him more touches on the ground, throwing it less. But whatever it was, it definitely worked.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that game since you're so excited to talk about it anyways. Teddy Bridgewater, 19 for 27, 177, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. The big thing there to me is the no interceptions because there's a good enough team in New Orleans. If you just don't screw it up, you're going to have a chance to win pretty much every game you play. Kamara was held to 69 yards on 16 carries. So I don't know if this is more about – he did catch 8 balls for 92. I don't know if it's more about the Saints or this is more about the Seahawks, because the Seahawks, their 2 wins are against 0-3 teams in the Bengals and the Steelers, and they're 0-3 teams that I don't think are very good. And the Seahawks could have easily lost either one of them, and Big Ben was knocked out, and Mason Rudolph almost came back to beat him. So I think there's a lot of questions about Seattle, and that's why I think the San Francisco 49ers are a playoff team, because I think Seattle will win their 8 or 9 games just because Russell Wilson's there and nothing else.
Yeah, and this seems to be the narrative every season when you're talking about Russell Wilson, the Seattle Seahawks. There's never enough around him. And Russell Wilson is still at that age to where they'll get by and they'll win some games. And this is my point with the New Orleans Saints. Eventually, you need to surround these quarterbacks who normally can get it done without a lot of help with more talent. And that's the issue with the Saints. You have Kamara and Michael Thomas, but behind them, they have a lot of nothing, and they'll get exposed by the better teams. Look at Tom Brady. He's getting older. What do the Patriots do? They revamp their line. They're trying to put every top-end wide receiver and speed around him. And eventually, the Seattle Seahawks are going to have to put more than Tyler Lockett, who Russell Wilson missed at the end of the game, in an open out route in the end zone, and DK Metcalf.
Yeah, and I still think it comes back to the offensive line, because Seattle, the year they won the Super Bowl, had a good offensive line, and they've basically let it go to crap. They haven't drafted it. For some reason, they're drafting running backs in the first round, and I don't understand it. I think with Lockett and Metcalf, Will Dissly's all right, but you got to have an offensive line to block for Russell Wilson also. And the ground game yesterday, Chris Carson, 15 for 53. Russell Wilson, 7 for 51. And when I look at this, I think the Seahawks are in probably more trouble than the Saints are, because I think the Saints have a better roster.
If anything, I would call it, if you're talking about roster talent, I would say it's pretty even, because Seattle at least has some players on defense where I don't know if the Saints have that.
A decent offensive line now.
Yeah, see, that's a big thing that killed the Saints, and I know I've talked about it in a face-off, and I've talked about it here with you. Losing Max Unger was huge.
Yeah,
that
one of
was
the best centers
huge.
in football. And it was huge when they got him, and that's why the team all of a sudden became 2 or 3, 4 wins better just when they got him. You know, so I think it bodes well for your Cowboys next week. I'll probably pick the Saints anyways, just so we can argue about something, but I don't think the Seahawks are a playoff team, and if they are, it's going to be like last year where they slip in at 9-7 because Russell Wilson's a really good quarterback. But the funniest thing was Pete Carroll getting his nose broke by the football before the game yesterday.
Yeah, at least he continued to coach.
Yeah, he looked pretty pissed, or at least in a lot of pain. All right, let's go to Buffalo, where the Bills are now 3-0. This is not a 3-0 team from what I've seen, but they are a tough, hard-nosed team that gives themselves a chance to win the game at the end. The thing that worries me here about the Bills is they dominated this game for probably 3 quarters, 2.5 quarters, and still almost lost the damn game. So my question with the Bills is Josh Allen good enough to put them over the top? Because I see kind of the gunslinger mentality. I know he drove them down at the end of the game, but this Cincinnati defense is horrible, and they only put up 21 points.
I'm a Josh Allen guy. He's still young. He was impressive down the stretch last season. He played well in the first 2 games of the year, and of course, you know, you're not going to put up monster numbers or big-time numbers every time you step out in the field, and, you know, the Bengals aren't going to be bad every single time they get on the field. And that's tough being a fantasy football guy, because you try to call the big games, and I thought Allen was going to have a better game. But what matters is the win. The Buffalo Bills are 3-0. I'm not too shocked, because I thought
I'm not
the
shocked
Bills,
because of who they've played.
The Bills quietly had one of the best off seasons that nobody's talking about, considering what they added in the draft for their defense, on the offensive line and free agency. Their new receivers, John Brown looks rejuvenated. Cole Beasley is playing well in the slot. So they have a lot of pieces, and they're going to get Devin Singletary back. and he's going to add another dynamic weapon to this offense.
How about this, though? Let's face it. The reason the Buffalo Bills may be a playoff team is because the AFC, outside of 2 or 3 teams, is atrocious, Anthony.
Yeah, and especially now that you take away Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers.
Well, I think the Steelers are better now than when they had Ben Roethlisberger. I think Ben was done.
I don't know about that. You can never count these guys out. I never count these guys
because
out.
you know what? I'd never seen him show up that fat before.
How long were we saying Tom Brady? How long are we saying Brady's done?
I've never said that ever, and you know it.
Not you, but people.
I don't care about people. I only care about what I think. So, the big takeaway here is the Bengals' offensive line is atrocious, and the Bengals are a team that they're not going to play bad any week except for on the offensive line and linebacker, which means there's enough skill position players in Cincinnati that if you let them stay in the game, they can be dangerous. But with Opie Taylor coaching the team, that guy has no clue. The offensive line sucks. The linebackers suck. The fans suck. Everything sucks in Cincinnati, especially Mike Brown. We'll just leave it at that.
The Dolphins, the Bengals are a work in progress.
Same thing. No, they're not. They're not a work in progress. How can they be a work in progress? I mean, you need 5 offensive linemen, and you need probably 3 linebackers. You probably need 1 or 2 corners. You can't fix that in one offseason.
No, but they're a work in progress. Give Zach. I think Zach.
No,
Taylor,
I'm not giving Zach Taylor a chance because he's an idiot.
Okay, he's an idiot who discovered how to use John Ross and discovered how to make Andy Dalton look like the quarterback he should have been for the past 8 years.
He's not because Andy
Dalton.
By
the way, a dysfunctional offensive line. And no AJ Green. And no AJ Green.
Function at all. AJ Green is soft as butter. That's why the man don't do nothing when they get to big games. That's why against the Pittsburgh Steelers he does next to nothing. I don't want to hear the AJ Green thing. The dude's hurt every year now for half the season. He should already be out of here. You could have got 1 or 2 offensive linemen that are good for him. Tyler Boyd is the story here. John Ross is not a story because John Ross drops more balls than he catches. You know?
So at least you're listen, I'm an AJ Green guy, and I do agree, and I've said it on this show that I think that they should move on from AJ Green. It's just a matter of will they.
Well, how about this? John Ross, 2 receptions, 22 yards. He dropped 4 passes. So, I don't know how he's rejuvenated John Ross. Andy Dalton.
I mean, did you watch the first 2 games of the year?
Yeah, I did. And I watched him drop a total of 5 balls in those 2 games. And the thing is this. You could talk about he took the number 1 against San Francisco, the last touchdowns in the last 5 minutes of a 41-10 game. Not a big deal. What did he do before that? The first game against Seattle was great, but he also dropped 2 balls that would have been first downs to continue drives. So it's great that he caught a touchdown pass, but do you really want a receiver in the NFL who's going to drop half the stuff that's thrown to him? And yesterday, first drive of the game, second play on 2nd and 7, they throw the ball out to him real quick. He probably gets a first down. Instead, the ball goes right through his hands and almost gets intercepted. So with John Ross, I thought he was a good draft pick. As of right now, I was wrong because if you can't catch the ball, it's hard to be a receiver. You know, it's
I don't know. To me, the jury's still out on John Ross because I like John Ross coming out, and he was misused for 2 years under Marvin Lewis.
Oh, he wasn't used at all under Marvin Lewis. I mean, Marvin didn't want him, and that goes back to the problem. If the head coach didn't want the 9th pick in the draft, why was he the 9th pick in the draft? Now, I disagree. I think Marvin's an idiot most of the time, but, you know, that's my thing. Why would you do that? So, next up, the Detroit Lions, as I did predict, Anthony, beat the Philadelphia Eagles 27-24. This is huge, I think, for the Detroit Lions. I think it's huge for the NFC North. This Detroit Lions team, when you look at them, and you look at the running backs, Kerryon Johnson, 20 carries, 36 yards. Matthew Stafford only throws 1 touchdown pass. These guys, especially on defense, are a bunch of guys nobody's heard of. But they are playing really well together as a team. And I know I got mocked on a lot of shows for saying I thought the Lions could make the playoffs this year, but this Detroit team, I think, is for real.
I mean, I know you're not the biggest Matt Patricia guy, but I like the Lions team. I like the way that he has coached them. Last year, you have to remember, Matt Patricia seems like a hard-nosed guy, wanted to change the culture, bring new philosophies to Detroit, and some players like Golden Tate didn't buy in and they got shipped out of town. I think now his second year, he has his guys around him, brought in a few former Patriots to kind of man that locker room. Matt Stafford looks like the Matt Stafford of old. And they won a really tough game against the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. And, yeah, it looks like the Lions could be competitive throughout the season. I love the NFC North. You have, the Packers are undefeated, and you have 2 2-1 teams, and then the Bears, whatever the hell they're going to do.
Well, the Lions
so it's
are
going to be a really
0-1.
Yeah,
so the Lions haven't lost
yes,
yet. And
yes,
they should,
you're right.
They should be 3-0. The Vikings should have beat the Packers, but they couldn't. But I think the difference here is I think the Lions might be the biggest threat to the Packers just because Matt Stafford, I think, is a lot better than Kirk Cousins.
Unless they protect Kirk Cousins, and that's what they seem like they're doing and not letting him throw the ball a ton. But when Kirk Cousins, I mean, that pass to Adam Thielen when he rolled out to the left, I mean, that's what you're paying him for.
Yeah, but let's face it. To win a Super Bowl, you can't be protected. I mean, how many quarterbacks have been protected and won a Super Bowl? And that's what you're here to do. So if they're protecting Kirk Cousins, they're limiting what they can do, especially with a guy like Adam Thielen. And they've got Dalvin Cook in the backfield if he stays healthy. We'll get to them in a minute. With the Eagles, how troublesome for the Eagles is this loss?
I think it's a monumental loss for the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, it was a home game, and yes, they were banged up, down 2 of their wide receivers. But when you have a guy like Carson Wentz, who people want to anoint a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, these are the games that you have to go out and win. I don't give a damn who you're throwing to. And they didn't. And to me, the biggest question mark for the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, they have a hell of a front seven. They can stop the run, but we saw it last year with the Dallas Cowboys, you know, with how are you going to stop the pass?
Yeah.
And that's what they are struggling to do.
Yeah, and I still think this. It's early. They're a well-coached team. They've got players. Those guys are going to get healthy. They're probably going to be all right. But with that being said, you don't want to have to be a wild card when you can win the division.
Right. It's early, but these are games that the Philadelphia Eagles should be winning. The Cowboys, albeit they play a soft schedule, the softest part of their schedule, you got to go out and win these games. And Detroit was certainly a winnable game for the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is going to hurt them because Dallas is now 2 games up. I don't know if the Eagles play the Saints, but if they do, I'm going to assume that they're going to get Drew Brees. And the Cowboys aren't. And these are the breaks that the Patriots always enjoyed. You know, you got to take the breaks that come to you.
Well, and I think this. I don't think Matt Stafford has played that well yet. And the thing is, he's probably going to at some point, though. And when he takes off, this team becomes even that much more dangerous because last week they only scored 13 points, beat the Chargers. That's defense. And this week, I think special teams was a huge part of why they won this game because I don't think Stafford was efficient or spectacular, but he guided 2 75-yard touchdown drives in the absence of a run game. Marvin Jones showed he's capable still being a big-time target. So I think this team is dangerous. And Matt Patricia, when you say I don't like him, I think the guy's a great defensive coordinator. I don't think he's a very good head coach, but what he does bring is toughness. And to me, it's kind of like, if you look at the history, like the Cincinnati Bengals in 1980, they bring in Forrest Gregg. Forrest Gregg was by no means a great football coach. But Forrest Gregg demanded of you something that you would give to him out of respect, which was effort and heart. If you look, the guy that was fired before Forrest Gregg was Homer Rice. Homer Rice was one of the most innovative coaches that ever lived. I'm friends with Reggie Williams, who played for the Bengals back then. And he's like, Mike, he said, Homer Rice was a better football coach than Forrest Gregg. But he allowed things to go on. And when Forrest Gregg got here, he didn't allow those things to go on. And once put it like this. I don't think Patricia is a great coach, X's and O's wise, game management wise, but I think he is very good at holding people accountable. And I think that's why you see so many Patriots gravitate towards the Lions, because you're getting a little bit of that accountability that you get in New England, which in the end pays off big time.
Yeah, and maybe it's a little bit premature, but is Matt Patricia, from what you see now, the best Bill Belichick disciple?
Would it take? Well, I think O'Brien.
And it doesn't take much. It's not really. It doesn't take much because they're not really successful.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien's done a really good job in Houston. He did a really good job at Penn State, which was a cluster to go into. But Bill O'Brien right now has a Texans team with the win yesterday with a chance to make the playoffs again. And he's never really had teams that were that talented, if you know what I mean. And hell, it seems like more than half of his playoff appearances in Houston was with a backup quarterback, or quarterback that should be a backup quarterback. So I would still go with Bill O'Brien. He's gotten the Texans to the playoffs multiple times. He did a great job at Penn State. But outside of Bill O'Brien, it's just Bill O'Brien and Matt Patricia, I think.
Yeah, I'm not a real. Listen, Bill O'Brien, now that he's kind of playing general manager, he's making some foolish moves. They really don't have a line. I don't see the Texans going anywhere.
They haven't had a line, but they're in the AFC South, which gives them a chance. That's the only reason I say that. And I'm just basing it off of this. Matt Patricia hadn't even got the Lions to the playoffs yet. Bill O'Brien's got the Texans there, 4 times or something in 5 years? So I think it's hard to say Matt Patricia, because he's 2-0-1, has done a better job than Bill O'Brien. But I think when all's said and done, I think we'll be able to say that without a problem. Next up, the New York Jets against the New England Patriots. The Jets, Luke Falk, 12 for 22, 98 yards, 1 interception. Le'Veon Bell, 18 carries for 35 yards. The Patriots, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Anthony, haven't given up a touchdown since the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game last year. This team is real scary because of that.
Yeah, this is the best Patriots defense maybe since the McGinnis and Vrabel era. And you pair that with how their offense is popping off with Antonio Brown, without Antonio Brown. Julian Edelman left the game, and they just keep compiling guys. And it's just a testament on how great Bill Belichick is at his job, being a coach and a general manager, and then you have Tom Brady. So it's just they're the Patriots. You almost don't have words for it anymore, and I just sit back and enjoy their dominance.
Yeah, and the thing that sucks is if you're a fan of any other team, the chances are very small, especially in the AFC, of ever getting to the Super Bowl.
Well, unless you're a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Dude, don't even start. If the Dallas Cowboys play the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, you're going to get your ass tore apart, because Jason Garrett's your head coach. And actually, outside of maybe 2 or 3 coaches in the entire NFL, I would give the same reason for every other team to lose to them. That and the fact that the Patriots are better defensively than the Cowboys, and are better offensively.
Well, all right. I'll give that to you right now.
Yeah, so how do you win a game where the other team has the better coach, the better offense, and the better defense, and a better kicker?
Very carefully.
You hope the right guard falls down, Brady gets sacked, and fumbles the ball. That's the way the Eagles want it. Yeah, and I think it's possible that you've got, like, those first couple Patriots teams that were defensive-dominated teams. You're kind of combining that with the version in, a few years ago where the offense is destructive. Now you've got the best of both worlds with them. And I hate to say it right now because it's real early to say this, and I don't totally mean it because of that, but this could end up being the best Patriots team ever.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's still a lot of time to go, so we'll see.
That's why I said it, but I was just doing that. At least I'm not Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith and just flat out state it, and the hell with everybody else, because I know that it's crazy to say that. Next up, Jacoby Brissett, Matt Ryan both put on a pretty good display of quarterbacking yesterday. Brissett was 28 for 37, 310 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marlon Mack, 16 carries, 74 yards as the Colts beat the Falcons 27-24. I don't think this is one we can blame on Matt Ryan, who was 29 for 34, 304 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. What's your take here? Julio Jones, 128 yards receiving. Devonta Freeman, 88 yards rushing. Are the Colts better than what we thought they would be?
I've said it on this show. I've said it on my show. I thought Jacoby Brissett was going to be good enough to keep the Colts competitive and maybe a playoff team. Did I expect Jacoby Brissett to be playing as well as he is? Absolutely not. So hats off to Jacoby Brissett. That offensive line, Marlon Mack looks like a different player. He's getting Christian McCaffrey type touches through the first couple of weeks. T.Y. Hilton did leave the game with an injury, but on the other side of it, this Falcons team, to me, their defense was supposed to be really good this year. I don't know if it's because a lot of them were banged up and they're still kind of getting reacclimated with the game, but that's where the Falcons are really failing on the defensive side of the ball. They're struggling to run the football with Devonta Freeman coming off the injury, but Matt Ryan, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns through the first 3 games. He's playing elite football once again. They just need to help him out a little bit.
Yeah, and the Falcons are notorious slow starters, so if I'm a Falcon fan, I don't push the panic button yet, but they need, especially in the NFC South now, because now you're looking at 9 or 10 wins is probably good enough to win the division, Anthony.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially in that the NFC South. Now, I think it's wide open. I think with Drew Brees out, if the Saints lose a couple, the Falcons really need to dig in and come out with a few wins. Tampa Bay Buccaneers were exposed for what they are. And I have an interesting take on the Carolina Panthers when we get there. But, yeah, this should be, and I picked the Falcons to win that division. They need to start winning now and not get on this track of losing like we see every year. You can't start slow in the NFL because you'll get too far behind, as you know. Or at any level.
All right. Next up, the Raiders and Vikings. Rematch of Super Bowl 11. The score was almost the exact same, Anthony, but it was 34-14 Vikings instead of Raiders. Derek Carr played well. I think what we'll see here is the Vikings are a really good football team that'll go as far as Kirk Cousins can take them at the end. Dalvin Cook, 110 rushing yards. Alexander Madison, 58 rushing yards. The Vikings are a really good football team. I think they're a complete football team, and I think the question, as we asked earlier, is can Kirk Cousins get this done at the end? Is he good enough to get them over the top?
I don't know if this is completely going to be on Kirk Cousins, but I think it's more on Dalvin Cook. If Dalvin Cook can stay healthy and protect Kirk Cousins, when I mean protect him by having a strong running game and not letting or not needing Kirk Cousins to pass the ball 30 times a game, then I think this Vikings team can go far.
Yeah, I still think they're going to win this division in the end. And I think they are a Super Bowl contender, and I would love to see them smack the hell out of the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC Championship game. Next up, we're going to talk a little Baltimore Ravens and Kansas City Chiefs. Lamar Jackson, 22 for 43, 267 yards. What does that tell us, if anything, Anthony?
What does that tell us about the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson?
Yeah.
To me, it's more about the Chiefs' defense possibly being a little bit better than they were last year. And also, you got to remember, Lamar Jackson, this is only a couple games in. He looked really good against poor defenses. It was a little bit of a different story because he was playing from behind. He had to score points rather than scoring points at free will. Marquise Brown, he was banged up. He's still dealing with that Liz Frank injury. It's lingering. And as you see, as the game goes on, he gets a little bit slower. He's walking with a limp. Those receivers are young. If these two teams play again in the postseason, I think it's a different outcome.
I don't know because
And one more thing. What the hell is John Harbaugh, who, to me, one of the best coaches in the league, kick the damn extra point until you need to.
Yeah. Well,
kick the damn extra point.
A lot of guys have a tendency to reach for that. You would expect more from John Harbaugh than that. My concern is I always thought Lamar Jackson's biggest problem was not being consistent. And the Chiefs, I think their defense is all right. I think it's going to be what cost them in the end. But 22 for 43 for an NFL quarterback in a game this big, and he missed multiple times, open Ravens down the field. Overthrew Marquise Brown at least twice that I can remember. Mark Ingram, I think, was a big part of keeping him in the game for 103 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. I think this game shows us some weakness in both teams, though, Anthony.
Yeah, there are definitely some holes on the Kansas City Chiefs side, especially their defense, even though I said they're improved. I mean, they were a bottom 5 defense, and maybe now they're a top 20 defense. But that definitely has to get better. Maybe they try to make a move for a Jalen Ramsey. And also, the Chiefs, can they run the football? Can they sustain drives, which is my biggest complaint? Because, yeah, it's all good when you can score in 2 and 3 minutes. But when you are playing a guy like Tom Brady and you need to keep him off the field, can you sustain a 6 to 8 minute drive and grind that clock? And I don't know if they can do that. I know Damian Williams didn't play and Shady McCoy was banged up, but they didn't really run the ball well in the first 3 games.
Yeah, and they really didn't attempt to that much. I mean, if you take away Mahomes' scrambles, there's only like 20 runs the entire game. I think this, though, McCurl Hardman is a good replacement for Tyreek Hill because 48 and a half yards a catch ain't too bad.
I'm a big McCall Hardman guy. I loved him coming out of the draft. He was raw. I always like to say, he only played, this is only his 3rd year in his life playing wide receiver, and it's his rookie year in the NFL. He was the fastest one at the combine at wide receiver. He is almost like another version of Tyreek Hill. They have Demarcus Robinson, who seems to be playing well. Once Tyreek Hill comes back, I don't know because it doesn't seem like Pat Mahomes spread the ball around when Tyreek Hill was on the field. It was really Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, and the running backs. Now without Tyreek Hill, everybody is getting a piece of the action, and that's what I do like. So I don't know if, it's hard to say that Tyreek Hill limits, but I do like to see the ball spread around the way Pat Mahomes is doing it right now.
All right, let's look at the Broncos and Packers. Mike Pettine's defense came to play again, holding Joe Flacco and company to -4 yards on a quick 3-and-out to start the game. I don't know. My question here, and I can't believe I'm asking this, is more with the Packers offense than the Packers defense, Anthony.
What's wrong with the Packers defense?
No, I'm saying my question is more of I don't question the defense. The offense looks kind of out of sync still.
Well, there's going to be growing pains, and it's Aaron Rodgers, but it's also a brand new system. The receivers outside of Jimmy Graham and Devontae Adams, they're pretty much young. They don't know who they want their primary running back to be because all signs point to Aaron Jones, who is efficient with his touches. They don't commit to him. Jamal Williams is in the mix catching balls now. They don't really have an offensive identity yet. But it is a good thing that the defense is playing as well as it is. I would like to see their run defense play a little bit better. That's alarming, but I think they'll be fine. And once this offense gets going, the Packers going to be a hard team to beat.
All right. My question with the Broncos. There's no pass rush, and they've got Bradley Chubb and Von Miller. I mean, what's going on in Denver? I mean, you're supposed to have Vic Fangio, supposed to be this great defensive coach. He was supposed to do a great job with these guys, and they were going to be much better on defense. And it doesn't seem to be working out that way so far, at least the early returns.
No, it's not. And I don't know if they're dealing with a lot of injuries. I don't know if they're adjusting to new guys in the secondary, but something is off. When you have elite pass rushers, like you said, like a Von Miller and a Bradley Chubb, they should be menacing opposing quarterbacks. And I know the Raiders game in week 1, they didn't touch Derek Carr. And that can't happen. They're not going to be successful. I don't care who their head coach or defensive coordinator is until they can start pressuring the quarterback. And on the offensive side of the ball, Joe Flacco is not it. And I'm a big Joe Flacco guy. I think at one time he didn't get the credit he deserved. I thought he would be an upgrade over what they had. They should have kept Case Keenum.
Yeah, because Case Keenum's a good quarterback. And Joe
But
Flacco.
that's the thing. So is Joe Flacco.
No,
Maybe
Joe Flacco
the game
was
past
better
Joe
than
Flacco.
good, but it's been a while. So I just think he's past his prime. I think he's on the downside where Case Keenum's not. How about that? Because I think Joe Flacco's a stud. And in the playoffs, for a few years there, who was better in the playoffs in the history of the NFL more than Joe Flacco? I mean, he got it done when it mattered. So I'll never say anything bad about him. I can't say that about Cam Newton because I always say bad stuff about him because I think he's overrated as hell. And Kyle Allen comes in yesterday, puts up 38 points with 4 touchdown passes to beat the Arizona Cardinals 38-20. Christian McCaffrey, 24 carries, 153 yards. This was really impressive by Kyle Allen.
Yeah, and, maybe it was a glimpse last season in Week 17. He had a pretty good game. I think 2 or 3 touchdowns, no picks, albeit it was a meaningless game in Week 17. But I think the Panthers came out with a win against the Saints. Kyle Allen, his first start this year, played really well, impressed the hell out of me. It looked like the Panthers had a different spark. Today, Ron Rivera came out and said that Cam Newton will not play this week, but will remain the starter when healthy. I don't know how you go back to Cam Newton if the Panthers start winning games and their offense looks this explosive.
Because he has to go back to Cam Newton.
I don't agree with it.
I don't either.
If the Panthers are winning.
In the world
just
we
like
live in.
with the Jaguars and Gardner Minshew, if they are winning games, you can't. I don't like screwing with momentum.
Gardner Minshew.
I don't like screwing with momentum.
Gardner Minshew would just be taking Nick Foles' job. That's not as big a deal as Cam Newton losing his job. Because who else are we going to have dressed up in skirts with lipstick and stuff on to come to post-game press conferences? So I think Kyle Allen should be the starting quarterback in Carolina until he plays as bad as what Cam Newton did.
Didn't Clinton Portis used to do that kind of stuff?
I think he did. And Frenchie Fuqua back in the 70s used to have goldfish in his high-heeled shoes. So, what the hell? All right, next up, the New York Giants get a miraculous 32-31 victory against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Daniel Jones looked very good, 23 for 36, 336 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that was with next to no running game. Saquon Barkley got hurt early in the game, 8 carries, 10 yards. There was no running game here. They played against the Tampa Bay team who offensively, Jameis Winston played well again for the second straight week, 23 for 37, 3 touchdowns. He did have 1 interception. Ronald Jones ran the ball well. What does this tell us? Is this a fluke because, Tampa Bay shouldn't have missed the field goal, should have won the game? Or do we have maybe some more life here in New York than what we thought?
Well, a win's a win. Number one, I'm not going to take that away because of a missed field goal. It's the NFL. You win any way you can. Daniel Jones did exactly what I believe Daniel Jones would do. He was a spark to the fan base and to the team, to the offense. Saquon went down. He's going to miss the next several weeks, I believe, with a high ankle sprain. So Daniel Jones is going to have to do it with Wayne Gallman, and they're going to be getting Golden Tate back. Sterling Shepard was healthy and made an impact. Evan Ingram looked good. They have some weapons on the Giants. Their line is playing better. The defense is a problem. I mean, when Mike Evans goes for $190 and 3 touchdowns, and Mike Evans even caught that long pass to set the Buccaneers up for that field goal that was missed, Janoris Jenkins should be out of the league. I mean, he gets burned by everybody. I don't care what name's on the back of the jersey. And that's what's going to be the handicap for the Giants and winning too many games, because better teams will put that game away and won't let Daniel Jones come from behind. Now, Daniel Jones did fumble the ball, and he's fumbled in almost every pro appearance in the preseason against Dallas in week 1 and now yesterday, but he didn't throw a pick, so that's a positive. I like what's going on in New York, but they're not going anywhere this year. On the Tampa Bay side, I think this offense is starting to click. You're not going to play the Giants every week, just like the Giants aren't going to play the Buccaneers every week. These are two teams that have a lot of growing to do. On the Tampa side, I do think Jameis Winston needs a little bit of help from the running game. And yesterday it was from Ronald Jones, but they also gave Peyton Barber the same amount of touches. Commit to one of these backs and let them get hot. I don't like these committee approaches, to be honest.
All right, next up, we get the Los Angeles Chargers, who once again are their own worst enemy as they lose 27-20 to the Houston Texans. And every week, the Chargers, you remember the Groundhog Day movie with Bill Murray where a guy'd wake up and he'd have to repeat the same day over and over again? That's what this looks like to me. And Sunday was another mistake-filled afternoon in Charger land. You had a holding call, wiped out a Justin Jackson touchdown pass. That cost them at least 4 points. Phillip Rivers' fumble in field goal range cost them more potential points. The Chargers give up 5 sacks. A face mask penalty wipes out an interception. Several receivers had brutal drops in this game. And this is just, the LA Chargers are their own worst enemy right now.
Yeah, the Chargers always start out the year really slow. They go under 500. They somehow put it all together for a run. And I keep saying it, I don't know if Phillip Rivers at this point can do it all by himself. I know Austin Eckler's playing well, but you have to believe at some point, you got to pick up that phone and get Melvin Gordon in the building.
Yeah, and I think if Melvin Gordon's in the building, it's very possible that they're 3-0 right now.
I don't know about that.
Well,
I mean,
you had a
because
close
Austin
loss
Eckler
this
is
week.
holding his own.
Yeah, but he's not Melvin Gordon. Austin Eckler's really good, but he's not Melvin Gordon. On the other side, the Texans, Deshaun Watson's amazing. I mean, there's a play in probably like halfway through the fourth quarter. I'm watching the red zone, and he appears to get swallowed up in the backfield. He escapes somewhere, some magical black hole or something, prances towards the line of scrimmage, pulls back at the last second, flings a perfect ball off balance to a tight end who rumbles 53 yards for a touchdown, which ended up being the game-winning score. And the thing that stood out to me is this. The pass protection overall does seem to be getting better in Houston for him, and I really love Deshaun Watson. He spreads the ball around. I think he is as tough as they come for a quarterback in the NFL.
You know, I agree to an extent to where that was always my issue with Deshaun Watson, is that he didn't spread the ball around. And I think this year we're seeing a little bit different because the tight ends are more involved. They're starting to throw to their backs a little bit. Because for a long time, it was DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. And if Will Fuller went down, it was Kiki Cutie getting all the targets. Now they're getting these tight ends involved a little bit. And Jordan Akins, you know, this is the second straight week he caught my eye. Had a couple of nice big plays yesterday. And if they keep getting him involved and expanding this offense, the Texans can make a run. But my issue is always going to be pass protection because it only takes one hit.
But it was solid. And the thing is this, though. Deshaun Watson takes those hits all the time and plays anyways. So that's the good thing about him. There's some hits you can't take. You got to hope it's not one of those. I had a battle of defenses as the offense has struggled yesterday in the San Francisco 49ers, closer than expected, at least on my end. 24-20 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. The offense showed up. Second half, he had a couple rushing touchdowns. What was your take on this one? I think the Steelers' defense, especially T.J. Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick, both played really well. Mason Rudolph was solid. He did throw one pick, but he did have 2 touchdown passes. What was your take on this one? I think it was closer than what we both thought it would be.
I'm not too shocked it was this close because the Steelers actually play well. They are now 10-7 when Big Ben is not the starting quarterback in the past 17 games. They're a tough team. I think the Minka Fitzpatrick, you know, this is his first game with the Steelers. He's only going to get better. I think this defense is going to get better. On the other side with the 49ers, the issue with Jimmy Garoppolo is turnovers, and that's what haunted them yesterday. They are lucky to come out of that game with the win. This is still a young team. You know, Deebo Samuel's a rookie. Pettis is in his second year. Kittle's in his third year. They're still trying to bring it all together. Joe Staley's going to miss extended time, and I think that was exposed yesterday with the Steelers' pass rush. My biggest takeaway, and I'm going to ride this into the grave, is that when we look back at Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown, they were always better together because look at them apart. I mean, Big Ben's hurt, and I know you can't predict that, but he's hurt. Le'Veon Bell is on a losing team, can't get out of his own way. He's starting now with the social media. And Antonio Brown's out of the league. So the grass isn't always greener, and we are starting to see that. I mean, look at the Steelers. They thought they were better without Antonio Brown, and they're on their third starting wide receiver, the guy that everybody thought it was going to be. And if you listen to me, you would have known it was, Dante Moncrief was a healthy scratch. I mean, the Steelers are in shambles right now.
Yeah, and Schuster, I don't think, is a number one and nowhere near an Antonio Brown. I will give them they did play hard yesterday, but you're supposed to play hard. Last night, Sunday Night Football, the Cleveland Browns offense exploded. Well, no, it didn't, and it still hasn't, as they got beat 20-13 by the L.A. Rams. This is still a team with an offensive line that is not very good, and they're playing an L.A. Rams defensive front that's as good as there is in the NFL, and they got beat once again to fall to 1-2. Anthony?
Yeah, the Browns are exactly who some of us thought they were. I never bought into the Browns and all the hype. They talked a big game, and they're coming up short. Their only win was against a New York Jets team that was decimated by injuries. The play calling by Freddie Kitchens is atrocious. I don't believe he should be an NFL head coach. And they're lucky the Rams didn't blow that game open more, because the Rams don't look the same on offense right now. I don't know if it's because Gurley isn't getting, 20-plus touches a game. I don't know if it's Jared Goff maybe not being, as good as his contract. I don't know if the league is catching up with Sean McVay. But, if that offense was clicking the way it was last year, that game would have been blown open in the first half.
Well, how about this? When we look at the Browns' schedule the rest of the season, they go to Baltimore next week. They go to San Francisco the week after that. They could easily be 1-4. They play Seattle at home, which maybe you get the win there to 2-4. You go to New England, you're 2-5. You go to Denver. Never easy to go to Denver, especially if somehow they get after people, but you figure that's probably a win. They host the Bills. They host the Steelers. They play the Dolphins. They play the Steelers again, the Bengals, the Cardinals, and then they finish with the Ravens and the Bengals. So the thing is this. I think this, Anthony. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to be at least 10-6 because the Browns. The Browns.
Come on, playoffs.
Look who they play.
Playoffs.
Okay, so give me this. So they're going to lose to the Ravens and 49ers, correct? That puts them at 1-4. Then they play Seattle at home. Did they lose that game? I don't think they do.
I mean, it's Russell. I mean, I'm never going to count Russell Wilson out.
Well, okay, so let's count that as a loss. And let's count New England as a loss. Then you're at Denver. I think if they get to Denver and or after the Denver game, if they're 3-5, I think they'll make the playoffs. If they can beat Seattle and beat Denver, they'll make the playoffs. Because after that, they've got Buffalo at home. They've got Pittsburgh at home. They got Miami at home. They go to Pittsburgh. They get Cincinnati at home. They go to Arizona. They host the Ravens. They go to the Bengals. That schedule's really easy. And last year, people forget this.
Yeah, I get it.
In 2018, when the Browns went on that supposed magical run, who did they beat?
I mean, I get you. I just don't know if they're strong enough to make the playoffs when you consider the Patriots, the Bills, the Ravens, the Colts, the Texans, maybe Jacksonville, the Chargers if they pull it together like they always do, and then the Kansas City Chiefs.
How about this? At the end of last season, when Baker Mayfield did all his amazing stuff, they beat the Falcons, who did not. Were the Falcons a playoff team last year? They weren't. Right?
No, because their defense was all hurt.
Now, they beat the Falcons. This is that magic run where they won 6 out of 7 games. They beat the Bengals. They lost by 16 points to the Texans, the only playoff team that they played in this string. They beat the Carolina Panthers, who had a losing record. They beat the Broncos, who had a losing record. They beat the Bengals again, who had a losing record. And they beat the Ravens. No, they didn't, because the Ravens beat them. So at the end of the season, they beat nobody on that run. And the only thing I'm saying is this is setting up so that may happen again. And then what would happen right away is a first-round wild card beatdown by somebody. But the AFC is terrible, so I think anything's possible here.
I mean, that's fair. I just don't see it.
I don't think they're a playoff team, but I think in the AFC, how many teams are really playoff teams right now? 3, 4, maybe 5?
I don't know.
I mean, because
I can't buy in.
I can't buy into anybody in the AFC right now that's not the Patriots, Chiefs, or Ravens. And I'm not 100% sure about the Ravens.
Now, not to interrupt all this Browns talk, but an MRI revealed a little bit of breaking news from ESPN's Adam Schefter. Saquon Barkley indeed suffered a high ankle sprain and could miss him. He could miss anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks.
Ooh.
So that's a longer timeline than your average high ankle sprain.
Yeah, well, with a high ankle sprain, they don't really have a clue how long that's going to be either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, let's look at tonight, Monday Night Football. Chicago Bears travel to Washington to play the Redskins, and you've got injury problems there because it's possible that the Bears won't have a kicker tonight, Anthony.
I mean, do they have one to begin with? I mean, the Bears are one of those teams that have
We got Eddie
field goal
Pinheiro. He's the one that kicked like the 50-some yarder to win the game in Denver.
Great.
Jeez.
The Buccaneers, the Chargers, and the Bears have some of the biggest kicking woes in the past 4 years.
Yeah. I think the biggest key tonight is this. I think it's can Case Keenum score points on this Bears defense? And when it comes down to that, I think you need what? Adrian Peterson to have a big game or a rookie receiver like Terry McLaurin?
You know, I don't know if that's the key to the game is putting up points more than the Washington Redskins, and they're at home, right? It's in FedEx Field. If they can shut down Trubisky, 9-6 wins this game for the Redskins.
Yeah, but they got to score 9 points. That's what I was worried about. Because I don't think that they're going to have a hard time shutting down Mitch Trubisky because Mitch will do that all by himself. And if he doesn't, Matt Nagy will do it with his play calling. Because my concern is, as high as you picked Mitch Trubisky, he's been in the league for a while now, and yet we're still trying to have him play not to lose us the game. And my problem with that is, you remember Mark Sanchez with the New York Jets, and they made the 2 championship games, and the mantra was, well, Buddy Ryan would even say it, or not Buddy Ryan, Rex Ryan would even say it in the pregame or postgame press conferences where he just got to not lose us the game. The problem with that, a couple years into that, that quarterback has no confidence at all. And I think that's the way we're headed with Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, a big game for Mitchell Trubisky. This is a game that he should be able to put up points, and if they can't, it sounds crazy to say, but maybe in a couple of weeks, if this offense doesn't turn it around, you're starting to look at your backup quarterback or possibly dealing for one of these quarterbacks that are available, maybe an Eli Manning.
Will they do that with a guy that they drafted that high? Because a lot of teams don't like to admit they missed on something, especially when they did a stupid trade.
You got a point there. You got a point
there.
And
they did the stupid-ass trade with San Francisco to move up a spot when they could have got Mitch Trubisky at number 3 anyways.
Yeah, you have a point with the whole draft stock.
Yeah, because a lot of teams lead into that. Also, it looks like Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey might return to the field this week. So you got to hope they play on Thursday night against Green Bay. You got to hope this isn't desperation because they just lost a game either. Because if they'd have won, maybe they hold him out.
Yeah, and another player I'm watching tonight is David Montgomery, the rookie.
I don't really want to watch the Redskins and Bears tonight. It doesn't sound that exciting to me. I mean, I was looking forward to the Bengals Steelers on Monday Night Football, but now they're both 0-3, and that doesn't seem as exciting either. How about Jalen Ramsey? He told the Jags he's sick and he can't practice today.
At this point, and I think I said it when we were breaking down the Thursday night game, if the Jaguars can somehow put things to bed with Jalen Ramsey, and if he wants to be there, I think they could be a playoff team. Jalen Ramsey does not want to be there. I'm not buying that he's sick, and he's playing the right card because you can't say he's not sick. To me, he doesn't want to be with the Jacksonville Jaguars. You absolutely have to move him.
Do you? Because maybe at some point one of these teams just needs to say to hell with you. You're on my roster either way.
Maybe.
I mean, because this is only going to get worse. Because it seems like every week now there's somebody else demanding a trade. They get their way. I don't think this is good for the league, and I think what
blame
you
the
end up
NBA.
With, that's what I was going to say.
The NBA.
It goes to the NBA super team mentality. And that's where we're headed with the NFL, I think. And I'm sure Roger Goodell would not have a problem with that. I mean, because if you look at it now,
I mean, in theory, you're right. But look at the Eagles. I mean, you can make the case they compiled a super team, and they're 1-2.
Yeah.
Football's a different game.
I know it's a different game, but also we've seen NBA teams we've seen Major League Baseball also that'll try to buy a winner, and they can't because a lot of times the pieces that are great by themselves don't fit together when you put them together. But I still think that they need to do something about this, and I would just like Jaguars just say, man, if you're sick, just stay home all year. Man, if he signed next year, stay home all next year too. Because let's face it, I mean, most of these guys have billions of dollars. It's not going to hurt them. So at some point, if we all can get together as owners and make a stand against Colin Kaepernick, maybe we could make a stand against selfish, self-righteous assholes that think themselves is more important than their team.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Neither do
Unfortunately.
Neither do I, but it would be nice if it did. You got anything else you want to bring up before we go?
No, I think we got it was a pretty good show. We got everything, and I got everything out that I needed to say about Teddy Bridgewater.
All right. We'll see if we can get Teddy on the show next week if he wins again against your Cowboys. We will be back tomorrow with a little recap of Monday Night Football and a look at all the news. Wednesday, of course, we'll probably have Sam Teets on to talk about his quarterback rankings that me and Anthony always disagree with, which always makes it fun. Make sure you listen to Anthony at the FF Face Off. You want to tell everybody where they can hear that, Anthony?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru, and you can follow the show at the FF Face Off, and you can find us on all of the top podcast platforms as my dog is coughing.
All right, as his dog is coughing.
Oh, you can't hear that?
No, I couldn't hear that.
Good.
But now everybody knows your dog's. You need to tell him to quit smoking. I told you that dogs shouldn't smoke either. It damages their lungs. I was trying to be funny. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. All right, guys. We're going to wrap the show up. Make sure you check me and Anthony out tomorrow at noon. And follow The Grueling Truth at Grueling Truth. You can hear all of our shows pretty much anywhere on the internet. Go to Google, just search Grueling Truth, and you'll find us. But we can also be found, of course, on the big ones, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Spotify. Wherever you find podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Anthony Servino, I'm Mike Goodpastor. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.